good morning, good evening, whatever time it is, wherever and whenever you're watching this. I am so delighted to be bringing back the Breaking Barriers series and with such a phenomenal guest as Sarah Mukherjee. Oh, you do that, but Sarah and I had the absolute joy of meeting at. We were both speaking at the same event, weren't we, on the International Women's Day? And I sat and watched Sarah speak, and I hung on your every word. I
Oh,
thought you were absolutely fantastic. Um, Not just a brilliant storyteller, a great experience. You covered so many topics, and you've brought in so many golden nuggets of practical, actionable things that the women in the audience and I could do to actually help ourselves in our career. And so I hunted her down, and I was like, I have to have this woman
oh,
on.
bless you. Well, gosh, straight back at you because your presentation was incredible. Really, I love the way some people you go in presentations and there's like 9,000 words on the slide and you're slowly losing the will to live. But you had yours was so beautiful, and again, you're such a fantastic storyteller. So it was a real honour when you said you asked me if I could come onto the podcast. I'm just delighted. Thank you.
Oh, brilliant. Well, and then, you were I heard some of your story then, but you were pretty modest, let's be honest, because Sarah has an MBE. She's currently the CEO of IEMA, which I'm sure you will talk about, but your connection to the environment and sustainability and all of those great things is a long-standing love and passion and purpose, having been the environment correspondent for the BBC, presenting national and internationally on TV, radio events across the world, and winning awards across the world, which I've holds no surprise for me. And so since then, you have been, well, what have you not done? Panels, posts, and chairs, and positions on multiple committees. And we are delighted to have you here today to talk, well, career, to talk strategy, to talk barriers, to what's stopping women from getting ahead, and what we particularly connected on, and what I'm really focusing the theme of this series on is menopause.
Mm.
So I spoke on menopause, and Sarah and I, chatted for ages afterwards, and we've spoken since, and it's definitely a shared passion.
Completely. And the point that you made as to the human potential and the human value that we're losing from the workplace every single year because of menopause. And I've had friends who have given up their roles, with bags of experience and bags of passion for their role, that they've given up not because they want to, but because they have to, because the symptoms of menopause are such that they just can't carry on with their roles anymore.
Yeah.
And I think if there was any other universal or almost universal condition that took a quarter of that bit of the workforce out because of it, I think we'd have been having very different conversations if it was happening to men. I mean, let's be honest. If it was happening to men, I think we would have different conversations around this.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I can't wait to get stuck into that. But you've so much to share and so much value to add, and I always think there's a great value in telling your story. So I've given the very light highlights reel of you, Sarah, and how you've got to where you are. But tell us your story, because I know it's a brilliant one that will connect with many people on many different levels.
So, well, thank you, Sinead. That's such a kind and generous introduction. You are such a kind and generous person as well. I think you're very much in the supporting others and helping them find their best selves. I was reflecting as I went back to my college for college reunion, and I was reflecting on this. I think there was a particular point in time in the kind of post-war history of the UK where my story was possible, and I'm not sure whether it would have been possible before or even afterwards. So I came from a very dysfunctional family and a very dysfunctional background. There was a lot of mental abuse and stress. There was it was about as far as you could get away from the kind of traditional mother, father, two kids background. I was very lucky that my grandmother, I spent a lot of my childhood with her, and although she'd left school at 14, she was determined that I should go to university. She taught me to read and write before I went to school. She gave me a love of books, which was fantastic. And I went from an Essex council house where I was living at the time to Oxford. And that leap, people like me didn't go to Oxford or Cambridge or even Russell Group universities, anything with that attachment of privilege. And I read law, and then I joined the BBC. After a few years, I paid for my way through university through healthcare assistant, waitress, all sorts of different things. And then ended up at the BBC. And again, this you can't quite believe the kind of layers of assumption and privilege and confidence that other people have until you see it yourself. And there's so much imposter syndrome and cognitive dissonance that you think, is it me, or is that completely ridiculous? This person who seemingly has very little to offer apart from a massive sense of confidence seems to be kind of just scaling the heights, slipping past you in terms of the promotions and that sort of thing. Then left the BBC after 20 years, worked in the water industry, in agriculture, and now I'm CEO of the Institute of Environmental Management and Assessment, which is the Sustainability and Environment Professionals Professional Institute.
Brilliant. Oh, there's so many questions I want to ask just on that little snapshot. And I think starting back at the beginning, like, what was it like going to a university with such prestige and privilege, coming from that Essex council estate? And you use the term imposter syndrome, but it almost isn't, because I'm sure people were projecting that onto you as much as you were maybe feeling it. So I'd love to hear about that experience.
Yes, it was. And again, interestingly, at this reunion, I saw someone else who'd gone to the same college at the same time, and she was on an ILIA scheme in the London Education Authority, where it was again, if you came from a particularly disadvantaged background, they supported you to university. And I mean, certainly because you have no concept of just what these places are like until you get there. I mean, you're trolling along, doing quite well at school and doing better at school, and then you can't, that kind of, there's almost a kind of algal mat of people who sat at the top of it all, who all knew each other. It just felt like there were 800 people in the country who were all related to each other, who all went to school with each other, and had, from the very earliest time, as soon as they drew breath, someone was applauding them. Mummy or daddy was applauding them, teachers were applauding them. Well done, no, carry on, well done. And so if that is your entire experience, you get to somewhere like university, you just kind of assume that everything you say is incredibly interesting and everything you do is incredibly useful. And that confidence just carries you all the way through, and it carries you through to your first career in all the way through. And I'm sure we can all think of people that we have worked with who have had that, and it's like a kind of magnet. You know, if you behave like that, people just that kind of fake it to make it. They don't need to fake it. They've already got it, and it absolutely works. If you sound as though you really know what you're talking about, people go, okay, then maybe we should listen to them.
Yeah. I can imagine. And actually, it's not even like if people have been listening to you your whole life, like you're somebody worth listening to, then the expectation is, well, of course, I'm just going to be listened to. What else
Yeah,
could I believe?
exactly. And there's that. It comes out in the body language, and it comes out in that kind of fearlessness, as you said, that assumption that everything that comes out of your mouth or that you have in your head is useful and worthy of a wider audience. And just talking. I mean, I'm sure we've all been man-interrupted and mansplained. Anybody who has worked in an office as someone female in the last 20 years, that will have happened to you. And but the thing is that no one often, and until recently, I think it has changed recently, but certainly 20 odd years ago, no one ever called that out. You'd be saying something, and someone just it's like you weren't there. You just think, hello, am I actually here? It's just, or
Yeah.
that thing from the Fast Show, that which is not funny because it's absolutely true. Where as a woman you'd say, "That's a really interesting idea. I do wonder whether we should look at the sales figures for next quarter," and everybody would ignore it. And 5 minutes later, a man would say, "That's a really interesting idea. I think we should look at the sales figures for next quarter," and everyone would go, "Yes, we should. Do you know we absolutely should."
Yeah.
Have I have I got some kind of neurological problem where I'm thinking things but they're not actually coming out of my mouth because does it have no impact at all on this meeting?
Yeah.
Apart from,
Wow.
apart from taking the minutes or getting the coffee.
Yeah, and of course it was assumed, yeah, that was your role. That's what you were there for, and therefore invisible for any other purpose or reason.
Oh, and even I was chairing a meeting once when I was in the water industry, and someone came in and said, "Oh, I'll have a cup of coffee with a sugar." I said, "Well, feel free. I'll have a coffee, white coffee as well, because I'm actually chairing the meeting." And they're sort of thunderstruck. Surely you are the minute taker. Who is the minute taker? What else could you possibly be here for?
And this is what I love about you, Sarah, because like these are, we sit and laugh right now, and we can joke about it, but these are really um the bigger the microaggressions. I think
Yes,
they're gut punches as you go through your day, your week, your month, your year. Like, wow.
absolutely. Yes, and I think the thing that has made us all, and we've all had our moments, the Me Too movement or the Black Lives Matter movement, we've all had our moments where we think, I assume that this was going to get better for young women, young people of colour in the workplace now. But quite obviously, it has not. Yeah, it is in many cases, it is just the same as it always has been. And that's where you think, first of all, we need to be far more present as senior people, as senior leaders, as educators, as supporters in what we are doing to call this out. And now I do in a way that I haven't. Really, it wasn't until the conversations around Black Lives Matter that I thought, we can't just sit here and be polite about it anymore.
Mm.
Now, if people are not being listened to, then you need to say something. And I've got the very privileged position now where people do listen to me, and I should be. I do feel it behoves us as people, for people who have got experience or seniority in a space to actually start saying some of this as well, and helping others with practical things. Like I always used to find, if I wanted to make a point in a meeting, I'd always used to try and find an ally, male or female, in that meeting who would reiterate it. So you'd say, let's look at next quarter sales figures. They'd say, that's a really good idea from Sarah. I think we definitely should look. And then somehow you're heard in a way that you wouldn't have been otherwise.
Yeah. Such a powerful thing to just turn the spotlight back to the person, and not just for the idea to be recognized as being from them. It's just a basic matter of respect that,
Totally.
yeah,
Totally.
it defies belief that it's only so recently that we call it out and we see it. I mean, we saw it when on the receiving end, and being a woman of color, being a woman, being in a very male dominated area, coming from Essex, going to that high level prestigious university, so not experiencing all of life's privilege and all the rest of it. You've experienced way more of those challenges and those gut punches than most of us, and so it's fantastic that you not only have got past all that and been able to be successful, but to use your position then to better things for others, I think, is what we should do, but so many people don't. And I, for one, am grateful to you for that. And I know it's something when you go and speak, you share loads and loads of tips on how to deal with that. So the turning the light back on others and sharing. But you had some really fun tips around how not to be the note taker and the coffee maker and all the other things. So have you some things that you could share with our watchers?
Yes. And it's the ability to say no. And I think if you feel junior in an organisation, or if and as women, I think it's sometimes difficult for us to say no. We should, I think, looking at seeing privileged people and the spaces that they occupy, they're not grateful. They don't then act grateful for being in a space. I think a lot of us are very good at being grateful for being allowed to occupy the space that we occupy, whether that's professionally or sometimes even personally. And so being able to set your boundaries and say no is really important. So if someone's just kind of looking at you as the note taker, I think it's perfectly acceptable to say, well, that's very kind of you to give me that opportunity, but I really do think that James should have that opportunity. I've got a few things I want to contribute in this meeting, and so it'll be difficult for me to do both. And of course, what they want to say, yes, but you are the woman, and therefore your job is to take the notes. But it's very difficult when you've given a very good reason as to why that shouldn't happen, and you can do it in a perfectly professional and data-based way. Again, getting the coffees. Why should a lot of women, even senior women, will immediately start pouring the coffees out. I've done it myself. When I'm chairing a meeting, I was like, why am I doing that? Everybody else can get their own damn coffee. It doesn't have to be up to you, or indeed to any other woman or junior person or younger person in their early careers to do that. And I think as a chair, you need to be really cognizant of that. For example, breaks. Now, we've all sat in meetings where just because the chair has, without wishing to be too indelicate about this, a bladder the size of a camel, they're sitting, you're 2 and 3/4 hours in, and you think, I really can't, because my thing's going to come up in a minute. I can't move, but I am desperate for the loo. Well, I've had to point out to a couple of chairs in the past that actually taking breaks is an equity issue. It's a diversity and an equity issue. Something as basic as that. If you are, a woman of a certain age, if you're pregnant, if you have children, if you have certain medical conditions, menstruating, if you've got neurodiversity issues, if you have physical issues that mean that you need to keep moving at particular times. All of these things, most of them are hidden, either hidden disabilities or hidden conditions. Then you need to have a regular break. And also, who wants to sit in anything for 2 hours? I don't even want to sit in a film for 2 hours, frankly.
No, exactly. Nothing productive happens in a 2.5-hour meeting ever. 45 minutes is golden. Then the rest, half the people are away somewhere else in their head. So what's the point?
Exactly that. And just, I think, and this sounds really odd, but I think you need to, you'll plan for the kind of intellectual part of a meeting or conference or away day. I think you need to plan for the personal bit as well.
Yeah.
Well, where are my boundaries going to be set? What is acceptable or not? I'm here not because someone's rolled a dice and I've got a golden ticket like Willy Wonka. I'm here because I'm a professional and I deserve to be here just as much as anybody else. So I don't have to show my gratitude by doing all the jobs that nobody else wants to do. First of all, they should be delegated to everybody, whoever they are. And secondly, it's not your job. It's not your job to pick up the slack, the kind of admin slack that someone else has forgotten about.
Yeah, absolutely. And the message it gives when you do that, as much as it may physically hurt you to say no, and it does until you've practiced it, but you're cementing that person's perception of you, and that's the absolute danger, and not just of you, but of every other woman or whatever it may be. But
completely. I used to do this. I mean, this is only things that I have learned. I say, oh, great grandly, oh yes, do this. I did it all and have learned some painful lessons. And in fact, there was one conversation I had. I was at the BBC, and I was one of those correspondents who would, oh yeah, you need someone to stand all night outside the train. Say, yeah, I don't have a mind. I'll do that. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I know you can't get anybody else. And there was a very, very posh producer who worked in Westminster, and I just said yes to something else I really didn't want to do. And she turned to me and said, do you know, darling, if you don't behave like a star, no one will treat you like one. And she's absolutely right.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. We all need to behave like the stars we are.
We all need to behave like the stars we are. And that's not, asking for only blue M&Ms in your rider. That is, although that would be great, but it's thinking I have earned my place at this table. I have earned my place in this space, and so I am going to behave accordingly.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah, and that remembering to focus on why you're there, what you bring, what you give, instead of all the reasons you think that you maybe shouldn't be there or you don't deserve to be. Fantastic. And I love that you brought in there, Sarah, about how it is a diversity and inclusion issue.
Totally.
And obviously we're talking about or we're going to get into talking about menopause, and immediately I'm thinking of some woman sitting there 2.5 hours worrying, suddenly has she bled through the seat, is she is she gonna pee herself, really things that shouldn't be a source of shame, but they are, and they're a source of fear and can be crippling. And so something you've been really hot on and ahead of the game on is absolutely creating the environment where these are conversations that can be had, where there's accommodation, support. So tell us about how that came about for you and what made you realise, gosh, we need to do something about this.
Well, it was a couple of conversations with colleagues, friends of mine who had given up work for the reasons I said, not because they wanted to, but because they've just found they found that they just couldn't do their job. It was going through menopause myself and finding that I had completely, I didn't recognise the person I had turned into, and realising how difficult it was to access HRT or any kind of support or guidance. And I went to the GP, and it was kind of, do a bit of do meditation, take St. John's wort or whatever it was, don't have so many carbs. Or you think, I don't think that's going to touch it, to be perfectly honest, because I can't get to sleep. I can't sleep. When I wake up, I'm terrified of everything. I drive at kind of 45 miles an hour on the motorway because I'm so terrified of everything. I can't make decisions because I'm exhausted and anxious. Do you really think that cutting out a sandwich is actually going to solve it, or doing 10 minutes on a meditation app? Not really. I mean, if I was coming to you with a palpitating heart and a crushing pain down, you wouldn't say, "Oh, I wouldn't have a sandwich if I were you, love. Cut out the coffee."
Yeah. Or if you came to them with erectile dysfunction,
Totally.
equally, they would not be saying, stop eating sandwiches.
Yeah, stop eating sandwiches. I mean, frankly, you've had a few too many, haven't you, love? There's also now. I am very happy to admit I am not a doctor or a clinician. I have no medical knowledge, but it just feels to me that this space is so kind of is so encompassed with silly old woman, really, what are you wittering on about now? There is a reasonable amount of research to suggest that women of a particular age and women of colour are not listened to as closely or as accurately as other sections of society is. And immediately the first step is, just stop wittering on. That's kind of the impression you get when you go, oh, you haven't actually got anything serious. And for that reason, I thought, well, we must make sure in our organisation we treat this seriously. It is a serious issue. So we pay for women who would like to visit a menopause specialist. We have a menopause support group called Forget Me Nots, which has been set up by, and we have trained members of the team who are menopause friendly, and we have regular menopause support because, and it was a bit of a shot in the dark because obviously we're fairly gender balanced, and I did wonder. We did a male health session as well, but I did wonder. Oh, should we have everybody in the meeting? It's a whole team meeting, and we decided that we should do because you would be working. There'll be somebody who'd be your co-worker potentially who's going through this, and a lot of even some of our young men in our organisation said, well, my mum's going through it, my auntie's going through it. It was interesting information, whoever you were. And if you have symptoms or symptoms of menopause, we do what we can to help support you with flexible working or whatever it is. But it is access to information. And the first time I went to see a menopause specialist, and I said, oh, well, I've tried meditation. She said, well, you need HRT. you need HRT. Quite obvious, you need HRT. And again, when you get HRT, I've been to see a GP about something else, and it's immediately, oh, you're on a very high dose. It's like, oh, you silly woman, it's not going to make you any younger, that was kind of the, really? I'm on the dose that I need to function. I don't want to take, I'd be delighted if I didn't take anything at all. I'd rather be medication, but this is what I need. And I wonder, to your point about erectile dysfunction, would that be the same conversation that people would have? In fact, you could just buy it over the counter, and you can buy HRT over the counter in Europe.
I learned that from you in our previous conversation, that you can buy it over the counter, because it is a source of great worry for me that I travel somewhere then I realise I haven't got my HRT with me.
Well, I did exactly that. I was on holiday in Portugal, and you open the suitcase. Oh my goodness, I'd forgotten my estrogen patches, and I thought, oh well, this is going to be a day of the holiday, going to a doctor, and went to the pharmacist, and she said, yeah, fine. What do you need?
Wow. Like, and that is the difference. Like, I remember going to the doctor, and it was an easier thing than I thought it was going to be. Probably a lot easier than 5 years, 2 years
Yeah,
previously, 5 years, and certainly
yeah,
10 years previously. But still, I had a list of things I was asked, was I doing before it would be considered. And of course, two of the things are diet and exercise. Well,
yeah.
if you've no energy and your
Okay.
joints are killing you,
Yeah,
then I'm sorry, but you're not exactly chomping at the bit to get out pounding the pavements, training for a marathon.
well, and it's the same conversation that goes on around food as well, food generally. Um, you can't look down your nose at people because they're from a different social class than you, but you can if you phrase it in terms of, oh well, if only you ate better. Even though you might be working 2 or 3 jobs, you've got a microwave between 2 or 3 families and rented accommodation. The only thing that you can buy that lasts is white bread and margarine and maybe a bit of squeaky cheese, if you're lucky,
Yeah,
because the kids will eat it. There's no waste, and you don't need a fridge. But much easier to just shame you
yeah,
for choices that you have no other option but to make.
yeah. This assumption that you have control over that, and yeah,
Completely. And as you said,
privilege at its best.
yeah, I mean, in theory, it would be great if we were all getting up at 6 in the morning and running a 5K. But as you said,
Yeah,
if you're if you're exhausted because you have not slept, if you're exhausted because of, that's part of your symptoms, and if every time you get out of bed you feel that everything's going to fall off, then no, that's not really going to happen, is it?
and you
Very
haven't even
often.
slept anyway, so it's like I can lie for another hour, or I can.
Exactly. And I do, and again, I don't want to cast the whole medical profession with the same kind of in the same way, because there are, and I have worked or worked with or been to see some really compassionate and thoughtful clinicians who are really keen on making sure that women live their best lives. I mean, one said to me, "Well, life is to be enjoyed, not endured. You shouldn't have to just get up every day and think, how am I going to get to the end of it?" And that's what we should be helping you with. But I do think that there is, it feels like there is a lot of quite kind of passive misogyny in
Mm,
this space in a way that wouldn't necessarily happen to men if they were having something similar. I mean, your point about erectile dysfunction is a really good one. That
you're not asked to prove it, are you?
no, you don't have to be wet. No, exactly. And you're not. Oh, what's your weight? What's your blood pressure? Let's just weigh you and measure you. And I mean, I have regular blood tests to make sure that my hormone levels are within. I mean, within normal range. I mean, that's absolutely, of course, that sort of thing. But really, as I said, well, you could quite literally knock yourself out, really, with Viagra, because you could that's very implied. You could go to every chemist on the high street again. I don't think there's anything to. Nobody's going to say how many packets have you got.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And you mentioned something really important about, because you're hearing more and more that companies are pushing back on flexible working,
mm,
hybrid working, working from home. And I mean, that is a massive issue in terms of diversity and
yeah,
lots of the way, obviously physical disabilities, neurodivergence, so many ways. But as a perimenopausal um, and postmenopausal woman, it's a huge thing
yeah,
to have that confidence that I can I can still perform my job from the safety of home. I can
totally.
change my clothes if I need to. I
Yes,
can.
exactly. And we haven't mentioned hot flushes or sweats at all, really. And that, even on HRT, I mean, I found I turned up to one meet. I was chairing an event for some one of our members' events, and I thought, oh, made a massive mistake of deciding I was going to walk from the station, which was about 35 minutes. I looked like I've been in the shower. I mean, it was just. I thought this is not the look of calm professionalism that I would like to. but you're right, yeah, and also I think Teams can be it's a very kind of democratizing. I mean, there's lots of disadvantages. It's much better to meet in person for some things, but everybody has to put their hand up electronically on Teams. There's no one dude in the room who's going to just take all the space and the time. You can't do that if you've got hearing issues and challenges. And some of our members have said, with closed captions, it's much easier to follow what's going on. So there are lots of advantages for hybrid and working from home. But to your point, I think even in a slightly tightening labour market, I know that at the moment, I mean, people are just kind of waiting and seeing this year as to whether they would hire or not. But I think there is still a big war for top talent, and people will vote with their feet. I mean, we've seen it already. So we're completely home working. We meet face to face quite regularly. Teams meet quite regularly. So you're probably meeting maybe once a week or so, maybe a bit more, if you want to, with your colleagues. And we've had people who have applied to us because we are home working, entirely home working. And I think saying to people, you just can't put that genie back in the box. You can't say to people, would you like to go on a grim train for $5,000 a year, to be packed in and have a horrible time 10 times a week in order to sit in an office and do the same thing you could do if you were at home. And so I think there are professions where you obviously have to be there, but I think increasingly you'll find that if you really want to get the best talent, you will have to be open to a flexible offer.
Yeah. Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I work with other organisations that are completely home working, and one of the things I love is actually that when they do get together, so there's some tech organisations I work with where it's maybe a quarterly couple of days they get together, full team building. It's there to connect and build relationships and have a bit of fun. And actually they work together fantastically because the effort is there to make it happen, whereas it's almost expected if you're in the office, it's going to happen just by virtue of you being there. But it doesn't work like that. And so they have ended up with really powerfully strong, supportive, connected teams. And I'm a big fan of that. And of course, it opens up where you get your talent from.
Completely.
And
Completely.
and whatever disability or other challenge you may have, then it's leveled the playing field. Absolutely.
Completely. And as you said, there are a variety of physical challenges that you may have that are made easier by home working. And there's that equity and the democratization that if you do have different issues or whatever they are, if they may not be visible on Teams, it might be much easier for you on Teams, and much easier. You're in a safer space. I think it's easy to underestimate how many people just find face-to-face meetings very stressful as well. And no, you're right, and you're also absolutely right that you can't have no face-to-face interaction. I think there's a danger you just end up being 35 people who share the same email domain if you're not careful. But we try and make sure that when we do have face-to-face whole team meetings every couple of months, we do something. We talk about work, but we also do something like a workshop, or we went bowling last time. Just something that's fun and not too stressful and enjoyable. It means that you can chat as well as work.
Yeah, build those relationships in a
Totally.
comfortable way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if there were any things as a woman or as a leader that you would like to see happen to support women, particularly at this time of life, either from what you've seen has worked or equally what you would like to see, what would your message to the world be about what needs to change for women at this time of life?
I mean, this is really difficult because I know how stretched NHS resources are. I mean,
Mm,
it's impossible. Sometimes it's impossible to get a GP appointment. I've waited weeks sometimes to get a GP's appointment. But I do think that a much more woman-centered approach for women's medicine and women's health would be really helpful. So to be able, I mean, in an ideal world, and I do realise this is completely ideal, but to have a centre that you can go as a woman and that kind of everything's there for you. You don't have to go and see the GP, then wait 3 weeks, and then go and see a nutritionist and wait another 6 months, and then go and see a physio. That would be available, and so you could really cut down on referral times. Also, it would be a lot quicker if you could start taking stuff, discounting stuff much more quickly. So I've tried that doesn't work. I've tried this, that doesn't work. And in the private sector, there are exactly clinics like that, and they include acupuncture and yoga and osteopathy, and you can go and get so. And I think, obviously the investment would be enormous if you were doing it across the country, but the benefits would be stupendous as well. I mean, cutting down on time, increased efficiency. I mean, the thing that we don't talk about in terms of the bottom line or the wealth of the economy is not days that you lose. I mean, we have talked a lot about that, but it's the days where people come in and they can only manage 60 or 70% for all the reasons we've talked about. If we could get that 50 or 60% to 70 or 80%, because they've got adequate advice, because they've had half an hour that they could spend with a specialist who can look at all aspects of their life and help them get the best. That would be that would be a huge difference to the country's productivity, because for every person who's just not in the workplace, I think there's an awful lot more who are kind of just getting by.
Yeah, surviving. Yeah, and that's absolutely true. And then the large number that are not getting by and then feeling that their only option is to walk away,
Completely.
which is such a loss to us all of talent, of ideas, of input. That if this many women walk away, I mean, up to 50% consider it. Like, that's just a horrendous thought that all of that talent, knowledge, experience, perspective could walk out of the door.
We can't afford it. We literally can't afford it. We can't afford those people to leave the workplace, and we can't afford to replace them, and we can't afford to have to support them in other ways because they can't stay in a workplace. And so finding ways that make it as easy as possible and changing that kind of, I mean, meeting times are just a tiny thing, but there's lots of those tiny little moments in a working day. Just cutting down lunch, because there's always another meeting you've got to fit in, and suddenly your hour has turned into 45 minutes or 40 minutes or 35 minutes. Well, you need to get out and get some fresh air and walk around and have time to eat so you don't get indigestion. And again, if you've got a variety of conditions, you've got Crohn's disease or IBS, trying to wolf down something at your desk. I remember I used to do quite a lot of work in Brussels with the European Commission, and I was on the board of a European federation, and obviously everybody went out for lunch. They went to a restaurant for lunch, and they sat down and they ate proper food. And I remember saying, it's been a few weeks since I've been, and I said, "Oh, this is probably the first time I've been out for lunch since last time I was here." And you could see them thinking, "Yeah, they're all barbarians in the UK. That's it. That's just confirmed." Because I speak from, I had French family, so I speak from French, and and they're saying, I said, "What did you eat?" And I said, "Well, I usually have a sandwich at my desk." "Sandwich au bureau?" I might as well have said, "And I've just stabbed my husband and left him in the car." I don't think it would have been more shocked, really.
Brilliant. Oh.
How you can see thinking, how can you live like that?
Yeah.
I think we should all be able to. You're talking about resilient workforce, resilience organisations mean, you should be writing emails at 10 o'clock at night. You shouldn't be working at the weekend. You shouldn't have to take your laptop on holiday. And we do our best. We're far from perfect. We've got a long way to go as an organisation, but we always try and say, that's it. 5 o'clock is, if that's the end of your working day, in terms of your hours, that's it.
That's it.
You should be going off and clearing your head and being with your family and doing the things to make sure you get some balance in your life. You should not be sending emails on a Saturday or Sunday, or prepping for Monday.
And we are about to finish up, but that's such an important point, Sarah, because one of the biggest triggers or exacerbators of symptoms, if not the biggest, is stress.
Yes,
and so
totally.
There's always on culture. There's always, being able to contact you, ask for something, make a demand, just increases everybody's stress levels. But if that means then that you're suffering more hot flushes, you're not sleeping, your anxiety is high, all of those things. And I personally suffered from suicidal thoughts and that kind of thing. And so, that stress, you just do not know what somebody is dealing with, and putting that extra load on them can just be the thing that tips them over the edge in many ways. And maybe the least of it might be they decide to walk away from their career. But that's what we have to be cognizant of.
And to what end? Actually, all this stress, to what end? Are you actually going to get that contract if someone's completely exhausted and writing an email at 2 a.m, or a presentation, while they're trying to get the kids breakfast? Probably not. I would have thought, really. No, I'm so sorry. I didn't realise about the suicidal thoughts. That's just, it's very, very difficult to deal with. And I think that's a strength. That's a tribute to you that you've come out the other side.
Yeah. Well, I think I try and I'd use my experiences as a gift to others to what can I do to help move things forward so that somebody else doesn't have to experience that, or at least doesn't feel alone. So thank you so much for your time today, Sarah, and for sharing so generously. And we could have sat and chatted for hours. You're so fun as well as insightful.
Like the red, always the red. It's definitely your colour.
Yeah, it's my work colour. You might not recognise me in my home life. Thank you so much, Sarah. It's been lovely to chat with you.
Yeah, likewise. See you soon.